posted over here. All right, appreciate everybody for joining us for Coach Franklin's weekly press conference. We'll start with an opening statement from Coach, and then we'll do some questions from Zoom and the room. Thanks.
So first of all, appreciate everybody being here, especially the people that are here in person. Really appreciate you guys covering Penn State football. Couple things. I think the first thing I wanted to say is, and I think you guys know this, but we have 14 players that we recruited that have come early, and this is the first time we've done this. They're basically here taking everything in, not really contributing a whole lot, but just sitting in meetings, watching practice. We talked about it with the Leadership Council ahead of time, and they were in support of it. And those guys have done a really good job being respectful of the veterans and the program and not creating a distraction, which was a long conversation ahead of time. But that's been really good. The only negative, and the reason I bring it up, is we got a couple guys from Florida who have never seen snow before, ever in their life. And I'm telling them, like we got significant snow right now. And I'm saying, we haven't had snow like this in 2 years. I struggled getting to work this morning, and I never struggle driving in the snow. But they're looking at me like, sure, Franklin, like the recruiting speech, like we don't get a whole lot of snow. But literally, they're looking out there, and they're like, not only have I never seen snow before, but not this much. But it's been really cool having these guys here. I think it's been a positive. I think it'll really pay dividends for us and for them down the road, just learning our culture, how we operate. They'll get to spring ball practices. They'll be way ahead. So ton of reasons that we did it. More importantly than all that, I just wanted to make a comment about, obviously, the tragedy in New Orleans. And our thoughts and prayers and support goes out to the families and the victims that were involved. Terrible, terrible, terrible thing for that city, for those families, for our country. It's sad in so many ways, So our thoughts and feelings from Penn State football go out to everybody that was impacted by that. Want to take a minute of a pause right there because you hate to just jump into the next topic after that. But we're expecting a large crowd in Miami. I thought last week, especially under the circumstances, I don't think people understand when you're playing SMU at home and you're filling up a 107,000 seat stadium with pretty much all of your own fans. SMU, small private school. That was impressive. That was a great home environment. And then the very next week, on a short notice, you got to travel again. And I'm talking about for our fans to travel again. And I thought last week's support was awesome. I got to give Boise credit too. I thought they did a great job. The energy in there was really good. But here we are again, and this is the challenge of the playoffs. But our fans have been great. Our fans are special. We recognize that, and we're expecting a huge crowd in Miami. And I challenge everybody to wear white and white out energy. We want that place rocking. Probably more hoodies than T-shirts from what I've heard on the weather report. But we need that place rocking, and we appreciate the support that we always get. Couple other things that I did want to cover with you guys. We did not submit, and I want to say this to you guys because it affects your job. We did not submit the availability report in the Boise game, and the reason why, and again, I know that impacts you guys doing your job, but the reason why is the College Football Playoff. It's not a requirement. And what happened the week before is SMU did not do one, and we did. So until this is a consistent mandate across college football, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to do one when they're not. So just so you guys know, I want you to understand that was the reason behind that. So kind of getting into this game, Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman, have known and followed Marcus for a long time. I think you guys know Jared Parker. Jared was on the staff there. Jared was with us. Jared and Marcus are really good friends. I've heard a ton of good things about Marcus, from Jared. Watched his career for a while, obviously, being promoted there and getting a job like Notre Dame, and has done a great job, has really run with it. I think in a lot of ways they're built similar to us. You look at their turnover ratio numbers, you look at their explosive play, defense in terms of defending and limiting explosive plays. You look at the middle eight. They're built in a lot of ways that I think we are in terms of emphasizing the statistics that matter. And they do a great job of not beating themselves, which I think is a really important thing in college football. It starts with that, and then you kind of go from there and play to your strengths and things like that. But I think they do a really good job of those things. Obviously, the quarterback's production jumps out at you. Total production, his impact of the game specifically as a runner and a big-bodied guy. But also can make plays in the passing game. Their running backs, we think, are legit. They got a massive offensive line. Defensively, when you talk about them on the defensive side of the ball, Al Golden, who's one of us, he's a Penn Stater. I've known Al for a long time, been a head coach, been in the NFL. He's doing a great job with their defense. Again, very sound, very aggressive, very disruptive. I think they're, do a really good job on the back half as well. His blitz packages are challenging. A lot of stuff I think that he's done over his career as a defensive coordinator, but also time in the NFL in terms of attacking the quarterback. They do a really good job. And then obviously Coach Denbrock on the offensive side of the ball has also done a really good job of playing to their strengths, running the ball, quarterback run game, and then keeping you honest with the passing game. And then I know last week, I think it's Biaggi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, the special teams coordinator. I know he got a lot of love during the game and on social media, but you really look at it, they've done it all year long on special teams, one of the better special teams units in the country. So this is a well-rounded team. Obviously, you don't get to this point of the season without being good in all three phases. So far, got a ton of respect for what we've seen on film and what we've studied, and we got a lot of work to do. So excited about the opportunity and open it up to questions.
Let's go to Rich Garcella on Zoom, followed by Johnny McGonigal.
Hey, Rich. We don't have no volume on Rich. See his handsome face, but can't hear you, Rich.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now. Okay. There you are.
Okay. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good. You?
Good. Fine. Great. Hey, what kind of inspiration and impact do you think you and Marcus Freeman can have on younger black coaches by representing them in this game?
It's interesting that you asked that question. I remember, and I wanted to kind of go back and jot down some notes, but to me, it just kind of makes me think of when Tony Dungy and Lovie Smith played in Super Bowl 41 in 2007. That was the first Super Bowl featuring a black head coach at all, let alone two. Obviously Dungy became the first black coach to win a Super Bowl, which was significant. I remember thinking that as a coach, how significant that was, in the profession, and how significant that was for young coaches coming up in the profession to see those guys in that role. I also remember, I was the offensive coordinator at Kansas State at the time, and working for an African-American coach in Ron Prince. And then I also remember at that time, there was a lot of conversations about, will this impact the profession? Will this impact opportunities, for guys, earned opportunities for guys? And at that time, there was 6 coaches African American coaches out of 127 schools at that time. 127 schools, and I think if you look at it, it was Sylvester Croom, Carl Durrell, Turner Gill, Randy Shannon, Ron Prince, who I coached for at the time. It was myself, and it's interesting, on that staff, it was myself and Raheem Morris, who was Shola's godfather. And Raheem's now the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. Ricky Ronnie was the offensive GA, who's the head coach at Old Dominion. Scott Frost was the defensive GA, who's the head coach now again at Central Florida. Really, really good staff. And then I don't know if I mentioned Tyrone Willingham was the other one. And there was conversations about how will this impact. And I look at it since then, there's an increase of 7%. There's 16 coaches now out of 134. And I know some people will say, well, that's not a huge increase, but it is an increase. So, at the end of the day, does this create opportunities for more guys to get in front of athletic directors? Does this create opportunities for search firms? I hope so. I think at the end of the day, you just want an opportunity, and you want to be able to earn it through your work and through your actions. So, we'll see. I take a lot of pride in it. I think you guys know there's been some conversations in the past. I kept private for a long time, and but I take a lot of pride in it. I'm honored. I'm honored to be able to compete against Marcus. I'm honored to be able to compete against Notre Dame. Most importantly, I'm honored to represent Penn State and the young men in that locker room. And for me to sit here and say that it's not important and it's not significant would not be accurate. Would not be accurate. So all that's great, but at the end of the day, we got to find a way to beat a really good football team that's well coached. That's well coached. And again, I think, like I've already stated, at this point of the season, you really have to be doing all things well to get to this point. You got to recruit well, you got to develop well, you got to hire well, you got to have the support from the administration, which I think you guys have heard me say that we do now at a significant level, with Pat Kraft and Neely Bendapudi and Kleppinger. Before that, Matt Schuyler. And we have that. So pretty cool. So we got to be ready to go against a really good team, and we're taking advantage of each one of these days. Yesterday was our Sunday. Today is our Monday, so it's the off day for the players and the game plan day for the coaches. So we're a little bit ahead because we only had one extra day. Last week, the schedule was a little bit different. We had a longer preparation period. I don't know why that is from a college football playoff perspective. You'd think it'd be the same for each one, but this one's a little bit shorter. So, looking forward to the opportunity. Long answer. I apologize.
Let's go to Johnny McGonigal, followed by Audrey.
Johnny?
I just got muted there. All right, I think I'm good now.
Hey, John.
Looking back a bit, what stands out, or what do you remember most about the recruitment of Nicholas Singleton, and how have you seen him grow as a person and player over the last 3 years?
Yeah, so I think you guys know. I think at the time we had a guy on our team that we have a ton of respect for from Governor Mifflin High School, and Jan Johnson, who's now coaching with Coach Pry at Virginia Tech. And Jan just had a phenomenal career, in some ways very similar to Dom DeLuca's path, right, in a lot of ways. So we had a good relationship with that school. We had a good relationship with those coaches. I think both of them kind of had the same trainer as well, Garage Strength. They do a phenomenal job, so there was some connections there as well. And he just was like a really good athlete. And very early on, we weren't even necessarily sure what he was going to be, but we wanted him on our roster. We just knew he was too big, strong, fast. We were going to want him somewhere. you got to remember when Coach Pry was here, every good player that we were recruiting, he thought was a linebacker. Every single one of them. So, I think early on I thought, in a really good place, and then he went on some visits and almost lost him. And then we're able to get him back, and had a great senior year, and has really just showed up here ready to contribute. He's a guy, I think, in a lot of ways, like a lot of guys say they want to play as freshmen, but he approached it that way, in the weight room, in terms of learning the offense, how he practiced. Got an awesome mom and dad. One of the best home visit meals we've had. Mom made oxtail. I don't know if you guys know, Coach Troutwine's lost over 100 pounds since his playing days, and he never eats anything. He packs his own food. Everything's organic, like even water. Like he won't drink certain water. I'm like, what are we talking about? Trout killed the oxtail. He was like crushing and going back for seconds and thirds, which I've never seen Trout like that. Got a great relationship with mom and dad and brother, to be honest with you, as well. And I think he's just another example of a local kid that has thrived here. He's crushing it academically, been great in the community. I think you guys have got to spend a lot of time around him. He's a man of few words, but he's a substance guy. And to me, that's what Penn State is about. We may not be the flashiest. It's funny. I even look at Notre Dame, and there was a lot of parallels between like Notre Dame and Penn State, and kind of the same uniforms. And now Notre Dame's even got a ton of different uniforms and things like that. But to me, he's a Penn State guy in terms of just substance, right? And has maximized his career. I think obviously he's trying to decide what he's going to do, him and his family. Been a ton of conversations there. But he's been awesome. I think him and K-Tron have developed a really good relationship. With sometimes that's not always the case. It can be adversarial. They've been really good friends, both on and off the field. I think they're complementary pieces to each other. But he's doing great. He's thriving. Obviously, we'd love him back, but if he decides to come out, we'll fight like heck to get him drafted as high as possible. And I know it's really important for him to go play well in this game this week to keep this season going and to keep this team together. We got 65 plays left on offense, defense, 24 plays on special teams. That's how we're approaching it. And Nick's been a leader like that. So, big fan of Nick and his mom and dad and Governor Mifflin High School, and how he's kind of handled his whole Penn State career. If it was just about Penn State and being greedy, I'd love him back, but I ultimately want him to do what's best for him. More times than not, it's going to be what's best for everybody.
Let's go to Audrey Snyder, followed by Adam Rittenberg.
Hey, James, how are you?
Hey, Audrey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I wanted to ask about Abdul Carter. How do you think he's kind of progressing this week, and do you anticipate him being available on Thursday?
Yeah, he's doing great. His attitude is great. His mentality's been really good. We'll see, but I think he's taken the right approach and mentality, and it's going to come down to how he feels and how much practice he's able to get during the week. At this point, I don't think there's anything that is stopping him from playing, but it's going to come down to how is he able to play, and we'll see, but his mentality is great. He's got a big smile on his face. I think he's excited about this week, but it's too early to say at this stage. And as you guys know, I don't usually talk about these things a whole lot. I get where we're at. This is an important piece and storyline, but Abdul's going about things the right way, and And we'll see how this thing plays out.
We'll go to Adam Rittenberg and then Mark Brennan.
Hi, James. Good
Hey,
to
Adam.
see you. Well,
Adam, where are you? Because everybody else I've known so far, they sit in the same room. Where is this?
yeah, I'm at home. This is the home office, so very similar place to normal.
Home office, basement, up on the normal floor. Are you in New York?
Normal floor. Normal floor. So
Awesome.
yeah. We'll have to have you over for dinner sometime when you're in Chicago. So
The picture over your left shoulder, is that something significant that I should know? Is that something a family member made? What is that?
oh, the left. I actually don't even know where that picture. My kids got me that picture. They didn't do it. And then I get a lot of comments on the upside down world map on the other side. So
What's the rationale for that?
no rationale, James. I don't put a lot of thought into this, but maybe I should.
And the degree?
That's my degree from Northwestern, and proudly display it there.
I love it. Okay. All right. Let's go.
Yeah, all right. You've been through the almost a full season with Andy, and I'm just wondering. He's obviously a really creative guy. How do you manage, or maybe just overall approach that creativeness that he brings to the offense, with maybe some times where, hey, let's just run the ball, let's do something straightforward, this is working. How do you kind of balance those two things, given who he is and why you hired him?
Well, a couple things. Number one, I kind of manage it like the same way I've always managed it. I think as an offensive coordinator, as a defensive coordinator, I may say to Tom Allen, hey, let's make him earn it here. It's a 3rd and long, trying to decide on the headset, whether we're going to go after them or play more coverage. That's the stuff I'll probably say. If they're discussing it, him and Anthony Poindexter on the headset, hey, what do we want to do here? And I may jump in there and say, hey, I agree with Dex. Let's go after him here, or let's make him earn it. And then the same thing on offense, where there's times where maybe we hadn't taken a shot in a while, and I think we need to loosen them up and be aggressive. Or we're at midfield and we're in 2-down territory, and I'm saying, hey, you got 2 downs here, so call this 3rd down as if you got 2, if you're going to go for it on 4th down type of deal. So allow us to be aggressive there and take a shot, or just pick up the 1st down. So it's more things like that. It's governing the big picture. We need to run the ball here. We need to milk the clock. We're ahead by 3 scores or 2 scores, and we want to run the ball here and manage the clock as much as possible. It's interesting, the creativity we want, and that's a big reason why he's here. The explosive plays, which are typically tied to the creative plays. It's funny though, last week we ran the toss where Ty Warren tossed it to Drew, and we tried to take a shot down the field. And everybody thought that was a bad decision, according to Chris Peterson and Greg Kincaid. They sent that to me because it didn't work, right? When it works, everybody thinks it's the great decision. The double pass to Tyler Warren, the throwback. If that didn't work against USC, it was, oh my God, they tried to get too cute, right? For us, we work at these things. We want to be aggressive. We want it to be just part of our identity. This is what we do. And I think it creates a lot more headaches for the defensive coordinator and the defensive staff that's trying to prepare for these things. And at the end of the day, it's about execution. You got to rep it enough that the guys know what to do. So, like, for example, it's not always going to play out the way you repped it in practice. So have you repped it enough that when the ball's supposed to go here and that's not open and it's been open every single time in practice, have you given them the look where, okay, that's covered, and what's our answer right here? Are we throwing the ball away? Is there an outlet? Are we trying to get back to the line of scrimmage? Whatever it may be. I think that's the important thing is – we want the creativity. We want the explosive plays. That's probably the biggest difference in our offense this year is the explosive plays, which is a big reason why he's here. But those are also tied to the creativity and also all the things that you got to try to prepare for during a week, right? So it's all of that. And for me, it's just, either pushing Tom and Stig and Andy to be more aggressive when I think we need to, or when there's times that we need to be a little bit more conservative. That's kind of how I see it. And during the week, we'll have some discussions, or during practice, I'll see some things, or we'll discuss some things, and I'll give some feedback. But I want us to be aggressive. I want Tom to call the game aggressively. I want Stig to call the game aggressively, and I want Andy to call the game aggressively and creatively.
James, Max Granville could have been one of those 14 guys walking around in a 00 jersey, but instead it looked like you were actually doing some of the same things you do with Abdul, with him out there. Can you talk about the strides he's made and how impressive that's been for a young kid who enrolled early?
Yeah, so Max is obviously a defensive end for us and has played defensive end this year. But in our third down package, to your point, he backs up Abdul. So when we lost Abdul, he's the next guy in that role. And I think it speaks a lot about our excitement about Max. Max, if you looked at him, from a recruiting standpoint, was highly, highly productive as like a 3-4 outside linebacker, dropping, intercepting, rushing the passer, doing a ton of different things. And to me, we have thrived with those types of guys. You look at Chop, right? You look at Micah Parsons. It's funny, a lot of times in a recruiting game, guys try to use whether you're a 3-4 outside linebacker or a 4-3 defensive end as an argument on why you should go one place or another. Chop was a 4-3 defensive end for us, is playing 3-4 outside linebacker in the NFL and thriving. Micah's now played defensive end and linebacker in the NFL, was a defensive end for us that last year when we lost him. We were going to do a ton of different things with him. You look at Jason Oweh, another first-round draft choice. So, we looked at him as a guy like that could do a lot of different things within our defensive structure. And the reality is the more guys can do in terms of drop and be comfortable in coverage, pressure the quarterback off the back side or the front side, off the edge really, but then also have the size and physicality to hold up in the run. And Max is 250 pounds right now and looks great. So he's another one of those guys. I think, Harvey's another one of these young guys that we're excited about as well. Malachi, we got a bunch of them. We continue to recruit them because they're just so valuable, that can impact the game and cause headaches for defensive coordinators, quarterbacks, and offensive tackles. So, we were able to play him a significant amount this year, but still save his red shirt. I'm pretty sensitive to that, especially under the new rules, being able to play in 4 games plus the whole postseason. So that can be a ton of football if you manage it the right way. And I think we did. There's some guys that we look back at that are 4th and 5th year seniors right now that maybe their freshman year played 2 reps in 2 or 3 games that burned their red shirt. We just want to make sure that we're managing that correctly. They all think they want to play as true freshmen, and then some of them, they get to the end of the year and they're like, well, I kind of wish I didn't based on how the reps played out. But you just never know with injuries and things like that.
Let's go to John and then Bob.
Hey, John.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good.
So you talked a lot about the aggressiveness when it comes to 4th downs and when it comes to play calling. When did that change and become a priority for you, and what spurred that change?
Yeah, it really hasn't changed a whole lot. I mean, if you go all the way back to Vanderbilt, we were doing those things there. I think some years you maybe do it more than others because maybe you're better at running the ball, or you're better at short yardage situations, you're better on the offensive line. And when we got here, I think you guys know this, I think we had like 3 or 5 offensive linemen in the whole program. So I wouldn't say our strength was the offensive line. And I say that and people are shocked by it. But you got to play to your strengths. And sometimes your strength is to punt and play good defense. And early on, that was our strength when we got here. Bob Shoop had done a really good job for us. We had a little bit more depth and talent on that side of the ball. So, if you go all the way back to Vanderbilt, that's what we did. Now, it's probably hard to find that because no one covered us or followed it. But that's the reality of it. So, for a lot of different reasons, you got to do what you got to do to win games and to give your team the best advantage. And sometimes it's going to be being aggressive and going for it on fourth down. And some years it's going to be punting based on how your team is built, how your team is constructed, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. But in terms of, our DNA and my DNA, we'd like to be aggressive. And historically, I think, again, if you just look at the numbers, it may or may not say that. But again, that may be because there was a couple years where I didn't feel like that was in our best interest based on what our strength was, who our strength was.
Hey, James.
Hey, Bob.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I was at the explosion earlier today. That was pretty cool to see. I don't know if you caught that, but it was pretty nice.
The explosion. Is that how it's described?
Well, detonation.
Yeah.
The felling.
I did not. I was not there, obviously. But I did see the videos, and then I did see what it looks like afterwards. I also saw, Greg showed me Tom Dienhart said, well, thank God, because it was the worst press box in the Big Ten. Whether you agree with that or not, I'm not sure, but we were fighting to be in the argument, right? So I think it's a great thing. Obviously, Pat's done a really good job, when it comes to facilities and moving the needle, not just for football. I was over at the East Area locker room for the other sports. That came out phenomenal. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Came out great. Obviously, the indoor that's being built over by the soccer stadium is going to be great. Soccer, getting some facilities that they've needed for a long time. So Pat's done a really good job, him and Vinny, of moving the needle for all 31 sports, which is hard to do. I think I've said this to you guys before. When you don't do facility projects every couple years like you need to, you can fall behind, and it becomes a massive project. So this stadium, I know there was a lot of, maybe some anxiety about it, but I think it's going to create some challenges in the short term, but I think long term it'll be in everybody's best interest and will be a stadium that everybody's really proud of. Will create a lot of the amenities that we need, because you're not just competing with other programs and other sporting events. You're competing with the TV now. So I know this isn't your question. I know you got a question, but I do think this is well needed, but I also know at a place that doesn't love change, it's also scary. But I think in the long term, it's going to be a win for everybody.
I wanted to ask you about Katron Allen. Had just a fantastic game against Boise State, but I wanted to ask you actually about a play you might not be too thrilled about, but it's the run that got called back because of the hold. But it was such a special run, and I was going to ask you the positives you took away from that. Not just the way that he ran and he finished that run. That was nasty. But the way it was blocked. It looked like everyone had a piece of that run, and I think it says a lot about where your running game is now.
Yeah. He is playing his tail off right now. And, you guys recognize that. I think everybody recognizes it. I know there was a ton of conversations about Mr. Ginty, and deservedly so, from Boise. He'd earned that type of conversation. But I'd make the argument we got the best duo in all of college football. I think, obviously, we're about to play a team that's got some good backs too. But, again, we're a part of that conversation. Katron is just so physical. He's just so physical, and he wears people down. He's able to run you over, keep his feet, extend runs. It's funny you bring that run up. So typically on Sundays, I show the team all the big plays in the game and try to identify not just obvious, like the common football fan or even some of the young guys on our team, they just watch Katron, so but you kind of try to point out the reasons for it being successful, the receivers down the field at the point of the attack, and then I highlight the guys that I want to make a big deal out of. And then also sometimes you don't highlight somebody, and that's telling too, because everybody's highlighted by one person, right? But I showed it, even though it was called back. I showed it because I thought it was such an impressive run, and he deserved his flowers in that moment, and so did the rest of the group. But yeah, I think he's running great. I think Coach Troutwine and Coach Howell deserve a ton of credit as well. Those players deserve a ton of credit. Andy obviously deserves a ton of credit, but a lot of people are spending time talking about Andy and Trout and Ty and the rest of those guys on that offensive line are just playing so well and so consistent and physical. And like we've talked about, run game travels. And at this point of the season, being able to run the ball, but then also you turn the tape on and you got Omari Evans running over your head and Ty Howell coming down with contested catches. Ty Warren coming down with contested catches and making big plays. That's challenging. And Drew extending plays with his feet and also picking up first downs with his feet as well. I think the development of our wide receiver room is something that I don't think has been talked about enough. That is turned into a strength. And I know there was a ton of conversations coming into the year. You look at the year that Trey has had. We have felt like Trey's been able to have those years the last couple of years, but he's had injuries. Omari really coming on and playing to his superpower. Liam, Julian, you think about those catches Julian had against USC. We're not here without those, and I get it. They're not gaudy numbers, but you watch how Julian's blocking. Where are the explosive plays coming from? The receivers owning all of the responsibilities of being true wide receivers. And, some of these guys may have gaudy numbers in terms of catching, but their run game blocking and things like that is disgusting. And NFL people watch that and they see that. So real football people know what to look for. And I think Marcus Hagans and those wide receivers in that room have done a really good job of making plays at critical times, being explosive. I think they are getting better. Omari's play on the sideline I thought was a big-time play last week. So I just think that's been probably – there hasn't been enough stories written, in my opinion, about that, because there sure was enough articles written about the opposite. And they have been a huge part of our season and our development. And again, at a time in college football and in society where maybe that's hard to do in terms of every receiver wants 80 catches and 1,000 yards. But those guys are a big reason that we've won the games we've won and that we're where we're at this point of the season. Because if you don't have it, those two running backs aren't getting the yards that they have because people are loading the box up. The fact that we've been able to get the ball down the field vertically to receivers and tight ends has had a huge impact on our running game as well.
Two more, Tyler and then Pickle.
James, hello. Right here.
Sorry.
I'll do my part here, ask about a receiver.
Yeah.
Back in August, you told us that you felt like Omari Evans had a real chance by the end of the season to change the way people are talking about him, viewing him. How important has his vertical presence been for this team, especially of late? And what's next for him in his development? Because it still feels like there's room to fill out there at a position that remains relatively new for him.
Yeah, you got to remember, Omari was a high school quarterback with a superpower, could run, came to camp and ran, back to the combine with Deion Sanders and Troy Apke. And, safety gets up from Penn State and runs 4-3, and Deion goes, who's this guy? This guy's fast. Omari has a superpower, but he's starting to really learn and embrace all the other things that go with it. I mean, if he comes down, he made a great catch on that one down the sideline, and then when he hit the ground, wasn't able to finish it. But that play still scares people when you see it on tape, right? And he's gonna make those plays. So I'm proud of him. He is blocking. He's being physical. He's making plays vertically down the field, and I think we're using him in the right way. And as he continues to make plays and his confidence is soaring right now, then you're going to see the other plays like the play out on the sideline when he jumped up and snatched it over the guy and then went down the sideline. The scary part is I don't think Omari's anywhere close to where he can be. I think as we continue to play this year, he's going to just keep getting better. I feel the same way about Trey. I feel the same way about Liam and a bunch of the other young wide receivers in that room. So that's exciting, right? And to me, we talked a lot in the preseason about that question mark in that position, and we have felt like we've had the talent in that room, but it needed to be developed, and they needed to run with it, and they have. I also will give Julian credit because I do think coming into that room, he has brought some maturity into that room. He's brought competition into that room. Sometimes you're going into the transfer portal to fill a hole. Sometimes you're also going into the transfer portal to create more competition, to bring out some of the confidence and the personality and the competitiveness in the room that you need, and you got to embrace that. And I think Julian's done that in that way as well. He's brought, his work ethic is second to none, and I think that has showed up as well, and I think it's helped the room. So to me, it's exciting because we're adding more pieces to that room, but we feel like the foundation is finally in a place where we can win at the highest level, and it's only going to get better. And those guys, again, they got more games this season, and they got more games in their future. And I think you're going to see a bunch of draft choices come out of that room, and I think there's going to be some surprises this year as well. So I think that's probably something that has not been talked about enough, is the development and the growth of our wide receiver room. And that's a credit to those kids, and that's a credit to the coaches. But I also think that's harder said than done. Tuning out all the outside noise and putting the team first. And they've done a great job. So I'm proud of them, and I'm happy. I'm happy for them.
Coach, you talked. Hey, how you doing? Good. You talked earlier about whatever decision Nick makes, you guys will obviously support him. But how are you balancing, obviously, the reality of preparing for 2025 while you're obviously putting all the energy you have into finishing this season as you play later than you ever have before?
Yeah, I talked to a buddy at another school that had a really good season, and they were saying that was a mistake that they made, is they put everything in to that season, rightfully so. But then a year later, you're paying for that, and that's the challenge. That's where having these staff sizes are so important, and trying to balance those two things constantly. We have kids on campus right now for official visits, right? So that is challenging. What we've been trying to do, and I've been talking about this with our team, it can be a real differentiator. And it can be a real superpower if you can compartmentalize, which is easier said than done. So what we've been trying to do, this week was harder, again, because we had less days. But the days before we get into the game week, we're trying to sit down and meet with as many guys as we possibly can about their futures, about NFL decisions, about their futures at Penn State, at Penn State, about NIL, about all these different things. Because the most important thing that we can do is retain our current roster for the future. But then you do that 2 days ago, and then I need them to put that on the back burner because we're in game week and there's no more talking about it. We're in game week, and that is easier said than done. It's hard for me at 52 years old now and been doing it for 30 years. And I'm asking 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kids to do it and their families as well. So to me, the programs that are able to do that are the most successful programs at this time of the year because, as we all know, the calendar does not reinforce that. The calendar does not support that. They're, in a lot of ways, they're in conflict of one another. So trying to get our guys to understand that, talking to the leadership council about it, talking to the captains about that. And then what I said yesterday after practice is, if you're struggling doing that, be honest with me and come into my office and talk to me. Like, I'd prefer not to, but if you're struggling doing that, come into my office and have a man-to-man conversation with me, and let's talk through it so I can understand where you're coming from. Or if you're a captain or you're on the leadership council and you know it's happening, come and tell me about it so we can address it and be as transparent and authentic about it as we possibly can. But I thought the last 2 weeks we've done a really good job of managing it, and we're going to have to continue doing that because, again, it is easier said than done. Thanks, guys.